Hey everybody, guess what we found?
The unaired Buffy pilot!
So we figured we'd do a little watch party.
Live on YouTube!
So stay tuned for deets.
And if the apocalypse comes,
Tweet us. Wake up to a new morning, pop in a little nostalgia, just be kind and listen to the rewind. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Rewind. This is Keenan.
And this is a very exhausted Jonah.
Okay, so this is actually not the first time we welcomed you back to the Rewind today. We just recorded, or thought we recorded, half of this episode without hitting the fucking record button.
Which is a first, I feel, for us, right?
It is. We've never done that before.
I truly thought we would have done that much sooner than now. So props to us for getting 3 whole fucking seasons in before we flub this.
Hardcore. But so we're gonna get right into it. We're gonna talk about the Teen Wolf movie because we have thoughts and feelings. Full disclosure, I was told that I really only needed to watch the first 3 seasons of this. And as I got through season 3, I realized that it was much longer than seasons 1 and 2. Like twice the episodes, because it had 24 goddamn episodes versus the 12 of the first 2. So I did not make it through all of season 3. And I got there just long enough to meet a character who is also in this movie. And I don't feel like they ever say her name at all.
There are a few characters that in this movie that you didn't recognize.
Yeah, there were a lot, but like Malia, I just met her. That was the episode I finished. I didn't say this the last time, but I thought it would, because we are birthed of a Buffy podcast, that I had to make this analogy. So I guess what would have been the mid-season finale of season 3, when they all had to die to figure out how to save their respective guardians from the Dark Druid. I was like, so they just did the joining spell from season 4 of Buffy, and now they were dealing with the aftermath of the first Slayer going through their dreams. I was like, okay,
yeah,
I see a little bit of season 4 Buffy here in this bit of Teen Wolf.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these supernatural shows borrow from Buffy quite a bit.
How can you not?
Right.
I mean, seriously. I mean, when you have the Bible right there, how do you not pull from it to shape your story?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So our sources for this episode are Rotten Tomatoes, Collider, Pop Sugar, and Screen Rant. The Teen Wolf movie was written by executive producer Jeff Davis. I'm not going to go into that again. Directed by Russell McKay, produced by Tyler Squared. That's Tyler Hecklin and Tyler Posey.
We're squared. Tyler Squared.
Released on Paramount Plus January of this year. Rotten Tomato scores are as follows. We have the tomato meter at 38% and an average audience score of 77%, because this movie is definitely made for the fans. Yes. I can say that. It's probably going to be the nicest thing I say for the rest of this podcast. So, according to Collider.com, the film is part of a larger 3-project agreement between Jeff Davis and Paramount Plus, which includes the new series Wolfpack, which, of course, we covered in our previous episode. So here is the synopsis of the movie. It's fucking wild. Here we go. Let me fix my glasses. Oh my God. I want to pull a clip from the oh my God, what is her name? Shakira She-Wolf song.
Which, we might have to pay for that.
That part of season 3 where they get saved, where Peter and Derek get saved by Meg and Tandy, they're trapped by people speaking Spanish. I'm not sure what their heritage is, but the older lady that comes out and cuts off Peter's finger, she's the abuela from Jane the Virgin. Love her. So I was like, damn, is she in this season? I guess I'm going to have to go back to it because I love her. She was a trip. Okay, so in Teen Wolf the movie, a full moon rises in Beacon Hills, and with it, a terrifying evil has emerged. The wolves are howling once again, calling for the return of banshees, were-coyotes, hellhounds, kitsunes, and every other shapeshifter in the night. But only a werewolf like Scott McCall, Tyler Posey, no longer a teenager yet still an alpha, can gather both new allies and reunite trusted friends, except for Styles, to fight back against what could be the most powerful and deadliest enemy they've ever faced. The movie is set in the year 2026 for some reason, which is 13 years after the events of season 6.
Speaking of Teen Wolf, okay, why are they still calling this Teen Wolf? They're all fully grown. Why aren't they calling it young adult wolf or something? I don't.
Jerry millennial wolf. Jonah, that's what these casting characters.
Okay. Among the returning cast members from the original series is Tyler Posey as Scott McCall, Tyler Hoechlin as Derek Hill, Holland Roden as Lydia Martin, Colton Haynes as Jackson Whitmore, Dylan Sprayberry as Liam Dunbar, Ian Bohan as Peter Hell, J.R. Bourne as Chris Argent, Orny Adams as Coach Bobby, Lyndon Ashby as Noah Stalinsky, the sheriff, Seth Gilliam as Alan Deaton, the veterinarian, Ryan Kelly as Deputy Jordan, a.k.a. a Hellhound, Shelley Hennig as Malia Tate, a.k.a. a were-coyote, say that 5 times fast, and Kylan Rambo as Mason Hewitt. Who the fuck knows what he is?
No one knows.
Notably missing on the list of returning cast members are Arden Cho, who played Kira Yukimura, and Dylan O'Brien, our fan favorite, who portrayed Styles Selinsky. Dylan O'Brien explained more about the difficult decision not to return to this universe to Variety in March 2022. Quote, "It was something I was trying to make work, but it all happened very fast." Translation, I'm way too big for this series now. Ultimately, I just decided it was left in a really good place for me, and I still want to leave it there. I wish them well, and I'm going to watch it the first night it comes out.
I can appreciate that he likes how his character wrapped up, but you explained to me earlier that he was a movie star, and I was like, okay. Whatever you
were like, the look on your face when I was explaining was like, not any movies I've seen, but okay.
I don't know that boy.
Say so. Yeah, we did get like, a shadow presence, if you will, of Styles in the form of his extremely ratty Jeep.
That damn Jeep. Every other scene just like lingering scene.
They forced it into its own presence as a character itself. You know what I mean? Like It was almost as a character itself, a stand-in, if you will.
Honestly, you haven't seen the Batman, but it's truly how, to me, the Batmobile in that movie was its own character, because you see it in various states of repair, and then when you get the scene that reveals the Batmobile, like the sound around it, like I guess the sound engineering around how they edited that scene, it was amazing. A much better example of making that vehicle its own like thing. Mm-hmm. But it was very much that. I was like, okay, Styles, this Jeep. You couldn't give me Dylan O'Brien, but you brought me this damn Jeep back.
Yeah, it wasn't,
I was like rude.
I'll get to that when we'll talk about that more when we get into like a little bit more of like the cons of the show. But I did want to drop some pros that we were talking about a little bit, which I feel like you probably don't see as pros as much as I do. But I was trying to be generous and acknowledge that there were some highlights, some positive highlights, I feel. One of them is, like we mentioned, this is a movie for the fans. It does a decent job of fan service, and it brings back OG characters, or at least most of them, and OG villains. It shows, I think, a cohesiveness between the characters. I think they have great chemistry.
Yeah. Well,
despite some really awkward moments and interactions.
And I think the movie, that's probably one of those things that made the show work in the first place is the cast, right? Like,
and everybody's adoration for the cast, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So that fully makes sense to me. Again, this just wasn't a show that I really watched, that I thought I watched. And then I was like, this is not the storyline that I remember when I was watching the first season. And I went through. Typically, this is something that I should be into because it's building on a mythology, but I just feel like there was a lot going on. And werewolves are typically lower on my supernatural creature like preference list. So I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's see what it is. And honestly, when I was watching the series, I love Styles. I love that damn coach. I like Mama McCall.
Yeah. Oh, she's a mama bear. Like, she's
love her so much.
And she gets to do a little bit of fighting and kick.
Oh my god! Well, she has that arrow, which, as again, so
the Buffy crossbow.
Those fucking crossbows. Those of y'all have ever heard me any of these other episodes, you know how much I'm like, crossbows are the most impractical situation, unless you have one that's like constantly like the reloading ones that have like barrels or whatever. But like it's gonna take a bit of time to reload it. Like,
I feel like crossbows are the same way though. Like, I feel like it's just a lot to work. Like, why not?
I feel like if you are an archer, there's a difference between like pulling an arrow from the quiver and like shooting versus like having to reload a crossbow. Like, I feel like that is a lot more intense, where you can kind of do that a little bit faster if like you have that rhythm and that's some shit you know how to do. I clearly do not know how to shoot a bow and arrow, because I'm sure this is not all that goes into.
I mean, it looks like that's the form that they take.
And for those of you that get to watch this on YouTube, you'll see what I was doing. So
I feel like Keenan was very effectively demonstrating how one pulls an arrow from the back,
from the quiver.
And
that's what it's called.
No, I know. I'm laughing because I didn't know that. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't think to say it. And then puts it in the sling thing.
The sling thing.
And then pulls the sling thing and shoots it. He was doing a very accurate impression, I feel. But
it was really cool to see her. I want to know if anyone can tell me, in past seasons, was there ever a love situation with Mama McCall and Papa Argent? Because you could see that going on in this movie. And then Peter was over there trying to like get Mama's attention too. So I was like, okay. Everybody throwing Miss McCall some attention, girl. You better flip that hair and get you a boo.
Speaking of flipping hair, this is in my notes, but I wanted to, since you just said that, do you remember the scene at the end, the last fight scene where Peter Hell is kicking ass and he cuts down an Oni when he's fighting, and then he does a hair toss, a hair flip? Did you see that?
I did.
It was slow-mo and everything. And I'm like, are they serious right now?
He is pretty. Peter is like, I'm too pretty for all of this.
He's a nice looking man, but I'm like, his character in this was so over the top, and I don't remember him being that over the top in this series.
He was very much over the top.
But in the last
also
season,
for
he
a snide convert. Well, I feel like where I am now, he may be building back up to his returning villain arc. Because like some shit went down whenever the dark druid dies, and I think he like takes her out ultimately at the tree stump. So I don't know what's going on now, but like him kind of like being in the background helping out through seasons 2 and 3, like he always had something to say. I was like, I see you, Peter.
Yeah,
I see you.
That hair flip though thing, I'm like, what hair are you flipping, sir? Like, what was it? Was so...
Just I gotta brush it back.
And can we talk about the really aggressive sexual attention between he and Argent? Like, the whole time I'm like, just fucking kiss already, bro.
No, I really got it was them both trying to get Melissa McCall's attention.
I
It was
didn't. That didn't translate for me. Especially with Peter. I didn't feel like he was trying to get her attention. I feel like he was just really intent on killing Allison because she came back as a nonstop badass, intent on killing all the werewolves, good or bad. And he was like, he's a very like no nonsense kind of, it's what made him a ruthless villain is because he's like, let's take care of this. No sentimentality, none of that bullshit. Let's just kill this bitch.
Well, I think I got him ready to kill Allison, but it was definitely some like, hey, Melissa McCall, I got somewhere. Like some of those scenes with the three of them, I was like, was this a story?
I think I tuned out a little bit whenever they were in a room together because I wasn't interested in.
Those were the only ones I was interested in. I did not care about the now adults who were teenagers in like the last TV show I watched. I'm still trying to understand how Lydia's banshee abilities work. I'm just like,
well, she says she can crush your skull with a scream that breaks.
Show me. Don't tell me. Show me. You got a whole bunch of supernatural.
She did in the final scene, in that fight scene.
When she called out Allison's name and everyone was like,
name, and all of the Onis disintegrated into dust. You didn't see that?
Did they? No, yeah. I missed all of that.
You must have been doing laundry or something.
No, I was actually actively watching this because I wanted to like make sure I was accurately talking shit.
Keenan finished this right before we recorded, you guys.
No. I really was trying to finish at least season 3, and the time just didn't work out in my favor.
It's hard to get through for so many reasons, much like this episode right now.
Yeah.
So obviously one of the biggest cons is not having Styles. That would have made it more bearable to watch, as we've established. I felt like despite the chemistry of the characters, the storyline itself was just all over the place and a bit weak. I actually think there. So this Screen Rant article I found by L. Cooper, titled "The Nogitsune was the wrong villain for the Teen Wolf movie," I think really puts it into words the best. So I'll read a brief excerpt from this article and see if you agree with this or not. But she says, or they say, the Nogitsune was the Teen Wolf show's strongest villain in the series, both in terms of power and in terms of storytelling. It gave the show's stars, most notably Dylan O'Brien, the chance to show off their dramatic acting chops and proved once and for all that there was more to Teen Wolf than cheesy horror and high school drama. Unfortunately, as the Nogitsune's story was so intricately explored in the Teen Wolf show, its master plan in the movie feels too familiar and repetitive. It uses illusions to trap its victims, messes with their minds with riddles, uses the Oni to its advantage, and possesses a main character. By repeating these beats, the Nogitsune made Teen Wolf the movie too predictable. The article goes on to say, though a few new elements of the Nogitsune's powers are introduced, namely being involved in Allison Argent's resurrection. I mean, sidebar, where the fuck did that come from? Being able to steal a kitsune's tails, as well as showing off its werewolf powers, acquired courtesy of the bite that Scott gave it in Teen Wolf Season 3, it's not enough to truly surprise the audience. Additionally, Styles' absence in Teen Wolf the movie means that the revival loses the chance for one of the most dramatic and emotional showdowns there could have been. Although the Nogitsune affected everyone, Styles, most of all, would be scarred from the experience. And that extra layer of emotional intensity is now missing.
Interesting. So this probably was the story that they had written originally, and then they were like, fuck, we can't get Styles.
Yeah. And they were like, okay, let's bring Allison back maybe. Which I feel like the fans really liked her, and they really did not like that she was killed off the show. And so I think that was really kind of a no-brainer anyway. But I think probably Jeff Davis and producers were really hoping that Allison's presence would save the movie, considering Styles was going to be absent, but it just was not a good call to have the Nogitsune as the primary villain because of that reason. He was the most impacted. He was a full villain in that season because of the Nogitsune. And it just is weird that he is missing from the story. In my opinion, the goal of the Nogitsune is to spread and thrive on chaos, right? And it would have been more
whatever you say.
Yes, I mean,
I haven't made it there yet. I mean, he came out saying chaos, so I assumed.
Well, they say it in the movie, so it would have been more chaotic, I think, and effective to bring back all the series villains led by the Nogitsune. That would have been fun to see, I think. The time jump was weird. Like, why 2026? What's the point? Were they just trying to line it up to fit how much they've all aged? Because some of these actors aged notably. Like, I was like looking at some of those necks and some of those jowls, and I was like,
when that other coach was like, how old is that guy? He looks 30 years old. I almost died because I was like, why are you putting him on the field? He gonna hurt himself. His old ass.
They put a grown-ass man on the field to play lacrosse with all of these children. That made no sense. Oh, it's so wild to me that the coach refused to evacuate when you have a grown-ass man saying tens of thousands of lives are at risk of dying. And he's like, we're not leaving until you win. And I'm like, what?
Wild. Also,
the American way, I guess.
That whole like them on one side of the veil, and then like when he threw that Derek's kid through and he landed on the field, I was like, is this a Disney movie? I feel like I've seen this sequence on a Disney movie.
Yeah.
What is happening right now?
Yeah. Also, can we talk about the exhausting slow-mo effects? So much slow motion. Kaden, this show it's one of the things that drives me crazy about the show, and then now the movie, is because they overdo slow motion so much. It's so over the top dramatic, very soap opera in that way.
Why are you leaping at somebody who is pointing a gun at you?
Okay. Are you talking about like in one of the first scenes
at the very top of the movie? Yes.
Yeah.
Like he was like, oh, and the guy's like, pow pow. Like
that kid, the one who plays Liam, he's always like, he sees a gun and he just he does take so long to do it. And I'm like, okay, in real life he would have been shot in the head by now.
In the head, gone.
It's just so unbelievable. Also, there were some really awkward dialogue and character interactions between Peter Hell and Chris Argent. Like I said, like there was tension there. You feel like it was tension because of like they were sort of maybe
competing
in front of Alyssa. I feel like I don't remember them having that much aggression towards one another, and I just felt like that was I feel like that was the movie trying to monopolize on the new hot daddy trend that everyone.
Well, and on top of that, like because again, me speaking of where I am in the show, like you don't see them really interacting right now because that Peter killed old girl, his sister. Right. So like those scars are very fresh.
Who also comes back in the final season.
Really?
Yes.
So I thought she was going to be the one like that was working with the Kitsune. What was this guy's name? The villain in this movie? The Kitsune is the fox.
Nogitsune.
Nogitsune. I feel like
it's too much earlier.
Well, I feel like they were kind of like demonizing some Asian cultures, but I don't know enough about those creatures. Because I remember the Kitsune from we talked about this in the non-recorded version of this episode from Lovecraft Country.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that was in Korea, right? If I'm not mistaken. He was in Korea when he met her.
I think the Kitsune is a Japanese character because Japanese mythology. I think it's the Japanese fox.
No, because I don't want to.
Hey Siri, what is a Kitsune?
I want to know specifically about the one,
Okay,
because there could
so
be.
Kitsune, it says, a shape-shifting spirits in Japanese folk mythology, often
Oh,
resembling foxes, sometimes with multiple tails.
okay. It wasn't a kitsune in Lovecraft Country. It was something different. It was a kamiho,
Oh,
but it's a aka multi-tail fox spirit. So it's similar but different.
that's really
Oh, now see,
that's
somebody put me
confusing.
in a Japanese mythology class, please. I want to learn. But the kamiho is Korean.
Okay, so similar mythology and like description, but like different cultures. Okay, interesting.
Okay,
Um,
because that kamiho was fucking folks up.
yeah, yeah, it's a very interesting power. Because it's shield. Oh no, you're talking about the the Lovecraft Country
Yeah.
version. Yeah, no. Oh, that was scary. Like that one, the Kimiho was very scary. To me, like their
Mm-hmm.
abilities, but going through with the theme of like all the reasons this movie is not great. The fight scenes also not great. They're not convincing in the least. It's like I just the only fight scenes that I actually enjoyed, if I would even call that, is Allison like going around kicking these grown men's muscular asses, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was the extent of what I liked about that. We had talked before also in the unrecorded edition of this episode how Malia, like we both liked Malia's character, at least as far as like the snarky and quippy dialogues that she has as a character, and
Yeah.
she kind of resembles like a little bit of like the Anya character of Buffy. And then Jackson, that snarky gay version, as opposed to the closeted jock version that we get, is a bit more tolerable. And I likened him before to Cordelia a little bit in that way. Allison, again, I think does a lot of heavy lifting and dramatic work in this show. I would say she probably carried a good portion of this movie, Crystal Reed. But that's just my opinion. What do you think?
I think it went on too long.
It did go on too long. I can't tell you how many times I was like,
through to her took too long. Like
yes.
that, I was like, I'm over this.
Yes, but in terms of her delivering on what her role was supposed to be, I thought it was like she came in and she did the job. It did go on way too long. Like
I mean, as far as her delivering the lines that were put in front of her.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder how many of the fight
girl.
scenes she did on her own, or how many of it was
stunt double.
Yeah, I'm just really curious.
I'm interested. I'm always interested to know, like, can I get someone that just like, I don't need to but like circle it, but just give me a tick on the screen, but like tick for, every time a stunt double's on the screen. I don't know.
Overall, I felt like there weren't really any standout moments, just a bunch of LOL ones. Just some ones that I laughed out loud.
What is happening right now?
Like the hair toss with Peter Hell, I thought that was laugh out loud. I also thought that moment in the last battle scene where like Allison remembers all the things. Mind you, there was a whole lot of time devoted to that particular moment where she remembers. I'm like, okay, in real life, she would have had her throat slit by now by one of these Onis, but it gave her time to remember everything. And then very slowly, because again, slow motion, turn around and like shoots an arrow into the head of the Nogitsune, and the scream that he lets out made me chuckle out loud, because it was just like, ah! It was just like it was a villainous scene. It was meant to be like creepy and terrifying, but it was laughable.
So the Nogitsune, it is an entity. It is an evil creature. It is not someone that is turned into something, right?
Yeah, I think it was like a demon or spirit or something like that.
Why did I think probably the whole time that was Grandpa Argent? Like the way he talked, the way Grandpa Argent had that like goo coming out of his mouth.
Ew,
And so the way he
man.
so do you remember like after he tried to trick everybody who was controlling Jackson and then ended up like killing him and tried to get bitten so that he could cure his cancer, but it didn't take and he started like spitting up that black goo or whatever.
Oh, I
And
forgot
so the
all about
last
that.
time I saw him was I want to say in season 3 when they were like trying to get information and he was like in the home, like wiping the shit off his face. But just the way he sounds, like the way he was talking, I was like, is that Grandpa Argent? Did he turn into the new Gitsune?
Yeah, no, because it does look like a really gross, like unbathed, like man with a sack around his face. I mean,
Well, I
that's
mean, like, because we saw with old girl that was a dark druid, like, I guess based on whatever happened, how she got killed or whatever, then she became this like disfigured looking situation when she was killing folks. So it's like, I
mhm.
don't know what the rules are here. Like when you start doing evil shit, do you just get disfigured? I don't know.
Actually,
Like,
I don't. Well, that is a trope, right? Like, it's the Batman movies do it all the time. Like, I think that now that I think about it more, I do want to say there was a backstory where he was initially maybe human, and then something happened, and he did become disfigured or like overtaken by evil, or some bad was done to him, or something. Because there was something in the flashback scene where they did a whole montage when Allison remembered, and they did all of these like moments with the other characters that she had before she died, and like Scott and everything. There's a moment where the Nogitsune is laying in the like alley or something, and it looks like it's an older flashback or something from like decades ago. Like, I don't know.
mm,
I don't remember that scene particularly because again, I couldn't get through. I missed a couple seasons here and there, and then I couldn't finish the last season in preparation for this. But really, there was no point in watching the last season in preparation for this because it just literally takes everything from season 3 and puts it into this movie, which makes it, like the article says, it makes it very predictable and less impactful. And the only way that would have worked effectively if they had brought Styles into it. And I think that's where this movie really suffered. It was just like,
yeah.
there were other things they
Interesting.
could have done with it as far as villains go, like give us a brand new villain, like especially if you're wanting to continue this story. But my
Yeah.
overall takeaway is that, it was not a good standalone movie at all. So if you are not a fan of Teen Wolf or you've never seen the series, don't watch this movie just for fun because it's not a single thing that's going to make sense to you. It's not going to be probably enjoyable to you.
Yeah,
Um,
you're gonna just be like, what is going on?
and I
What is
just
happening?
Yes, I just also feel like I've seen a lot of these actors in other roles before that are really good roles, and I just feel like all these actors are capable so much better than what the writing in this show gives them to work with. You know, but at the end of the day, it really is just like I guess, a fun background watch for OG fans while they're doing laundry and boiling their baby's bottles. So,
Well, in the bottles. Okay, so I do want to talk about the former chemistry teacher who I'm like pegged a villain each season because I was like, clearly this dude is up to no good, right?
mm,
Um, and he ended up being part of the big bad in this movie. And then he was like carried off at the end to something called Eichen House. Do you know what Eichen House is or what that represents for the show? Like, I feel like that was like put in for a very specific reason.
Eichen House comes up later, probably after, well, obviously after season 3 at some point. I think it's where Lydia, as she begins to as her powers, she starts to grapple with her powers and what what she's able to do, and it starts to drive her kind of crazy, and like her mom and like people around her think that she's crazy, and so they put her in Icon House, and so there's a whole like arc, I think, with Icon House being like this place that's like how like think American Horror Story season 2 Asylum. Like it's that kind of like really shady, like torture-y shit that they are up to, a bunch of no good shit. And I want to say there's some supernatural elements to, because there's a reason that in that last scene, the guy who comes out and he responds to when the chemistry teacher says, all those kids are werewolves, and the guy's like, he says something like, everybody talks about werewolves. There's always a new one or something like that. And then, of course,
you're not the first one to holler about teen, or like say something about teen wolves or whatever. Right. And then, of course, closing scene with Derek's kid, who I said in the unrecorded version, I hated.
We just did not like.
I was like, no, I don't want this kid here. No thanks.
The only time I ever enjoyed watching that kid on camera, and enjoy is a very strong word for this, but like, is where like the Nogitsune is like touching him in the like Phantom Land or whatever it's called, and he's like, oh no, it's touching me. I just thought it was like his reaction was funny.
It's touching me.
Yeah, it was just like, it was the one moment where it wasn't as dramatic, but that kid was so annoying. So annoying.
The worst, the absolute worst. And I'm like, I hope they're not trying to build a whole project around this kid.
Yeah, I can see them doing that and trying to resurrect the whole Teen Wolf like thing with a new generation, and he'll be like their alpha or some bullshit like that. I'm like, oh god, I will absolutely not be tuning into that. Like,
I do not need Scott McCall to be someone's like alpha watcher situation.
No, or alpha thanks. Grandpa. Like, no
thanks. So yeah, Jonah, do you have any more thoughts, comments, concerns?
My concern is that they're going to try to continue to make more of these.
Listen,
that's my only concern.
This movie is fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen.
Right.
So, with that being said, Jonah, what you watching?
Girl, what you watching?
So I am watching Last of Us. Continuing to watch Last of Us. It gets better and better. At this most recent episode, oh god, I tweeted it that I just don't think I'm gonna recover from it. It was like, I almost regret watching it now and not just waiting until next week to watch it with the new episode. But they premiered a new episode early, because normally it drops on Sundays. But they dropped this one on Friday, which I really appreciate as a fan. I thought it was cool that they did that. They dropped it earlier on Friday.
Well, and they didn't want to compete with the Super Bowl.
Right. That was smart. It was just so good. It was a brother. They did a side story that merged with the main story, with the main character story of this older brother and his younger brother who was deaf, and the older brother was a collaborator against the Fedra, which is sort of the government agency that is kind of crooked in this like post-apocalyptic world. And then the Resistance. He double-crossed the Resistance that he was a part of to save his brother who had leukemia, to keep him alive. And the way this episode went down, there was some really sick acting in terms of like acting was great. I meant action. It's really sick action. The action was great. There was introduction of a new like mutated version of these like creatures that was just like, when this thing came out of the fucking ground, I was like, oh my god. I literally was very audibly like gasping. It was so that is what I am like all the way tuned into right now. I am looking for other things though. So if you have any recommendations.
I unfortunately have done nothing but watch fucking Teen Wolf
Um,
all week.
So you haven't
I
seen the
have
newest
nothing.
episode of Abbott, the Valentine's episode?
Oh yeah, I did watch that. Like I watched
I
that.
truly loved it.
I also because we just covered it on DC on HBO Max podcasts, the Harley Quinn Very Problematic Valentine's special.
Is that the official title?
Every episode is more ridiculous than the next, and it's like, how do you keep topping yourself? And on top of doing that, they don't lose fucking continuity. Like everything that has happened in the story stays there, and they just keep rolling with it. And I'm just like, the show makes me happy. Watch fucking Harley Quinn, Jonah. I know you don't love an animated series, but if y'all, Harley Quinn is top notch. It's fucking hilarious. It's going. I believe it was renewed. It's probably going to be one of those side DC projects that doesn't get axed. Fingers crossed. Knocking on wood. It's so good. So good.
All right. Well, in the meantime, you can catch up on episodes of the Rewind podcast on Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, just kidding, Castbox, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, and Stitcher. And we would truly appreciate it if you rate, review, and subscribe us. We would really love to show up on the map of all the millions of other podcasts. It's really hard to get there if you don't have your fans and listeners like rating and reviewing and subscribing. So please do that. Help us out, and we'll do our best to make sure you don't regret it.
Yeah, and you can also follow us on the socials. You can look us up on the Facebooks if you're still there at The Rewind Podcast 1, or just search The Rewind Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at The Rewind_pod, and on Instagram and TikTok, both are The Rewind Podcast.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from you. Email us at therewindpodcast1@gmail.com. You could also leave us a voice message that we could play in an episode. If you would like to hear yourself on an episode, that would be cool. And you can also rewind previous episodes of the podcast at anchor.fm/rewind-podcast.
Yes. And so, Jonah, how can they find you online?
So to find me, you can find me on Instagram at JS Taylor Writes or Breaking Down Joe. You can find me on Twitter at Quirky Writer Guy, or on TikTok at The Cult Pop or Breaking Down Joe.
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter at Keeks on Camera. On Instagram, the O for on is a 0 because someone has Keeks on Camera and it's a spam account and I'm salty about it. And you can also find me on DCTV Podcast Network. We are going to be changing. I believe it's going to be DC Studios Podcast, just because there's HBO and DC like to keep us changing. So we have to rebrand yet again to fall into parameters, but we'll be able to cover all the fun DC projects that are coming up with a wonderful cast of folks, and we're super diverse on that network. So you'll hear voices from so many different people. Yeah.
Well, with that said, be kind.
And please rewind. Goodbye.
Wake up to a new morning, talking a little nostalgia. Just be kind and listen to the rewind.